Megan wiped down the chipped countertop of Rusty's diner for what felt like the 1,000th time that night. The old neon sign outside buzzed faintly in the dark Oklahoma night, flickering over rows of dusty pickups in the parking lot. She tugged at the fraying edge of her apron and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, watching the front door squeak open yet again. It was past midnight, but the diner stayed open late for truckers and road drifters who came through on their way to somewhere better. Tonight, though, the place was quiet, just the clink of forks on plates and the low hum of an old country song playing through the static-filled speakers. Megan was 23, a college student by day, a waitress by night, trying her best to hold her life together since her mom got sick last winter. Every shift paid for just a few more groceries and part of her mom's medicine. There wasn't any extra for trouble. So when the door swung open and the 3 local boys walked in, Megan's stomach dropped. Jared, Tyler, and Brent, town troublemakers who loved acting big in front of their friends. She'd caught them stuffing ketchup packets in their pockets, leaving half-eaten pies they never paid for. But they were good tippers if you didn't cross them, and Carl, the owner, would rather keep their parents happy than stand up to them. She forced a smile. "Hey boys, usual tonight?" They didn't answer. Instead, they nudged each other and pointed at the corner booth. An older man sat alone there, hunched over a mug of coffee that had long gone cold. He wore a battered leather biker jacket, a weathered helmet beside him on the table. His beard was scruffy, eyes tired, hands shaking slightly as he lifted the mug to his lips. Jared sauntered over, Tyler and Brent close behind. They surrounded the old man like sharks circling slow prey. "Hey, Grandpa, that your bike out there?" Jared asked, grinning. The man didn't look up. He just nodded once, voice a rough whisper. "Yes, son." Brent leaned in, snickering. "Bet you can't even kick-start it anymore. You look about ready for the grave." A few other late-night customers shifted uncomfortably in their booths, but kept their heads down. Carl, from behind the counter, pretended not to see anything, counting bills in the register. Megan felt the heat rise in her chest. She hated bullies, hated the way they treated people like they were invisible. She grabbed the half-empty coffee pot and walked over, heart pounding. She stepped right between the boys and the biker, forcing a cheery voice. "Can I warm that up for you, sir?" The old man looked at her with pale blue eyes that glimmered with gratitude. He nodded. She refilled his cup, ignoring the boys. Jared scoffed. "You his bodyguard now, Meg? Maybe you should mind your own." Megan turned slowly, her voice calm but cold. "He's a paying customer. You boys ordering or just causing trouble tonight?" Brent threw up his hands, mocking. "Ooh, feisty waitress. What you gonna do if we don't?" Carl's voice cut through the tension. "Megan, don't start. Boys, you want pie or what?" She looked at Carl like he'd slapped her. The old biker shifted in his seat, trying to stand up, but Megan held out a hand, steadying him. "You boys can leave," she said, her tone unwavering, "or sit and eat like decent people, but you're not going to stand here and hassle him." For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Jared clicked his tongue and jerked his head at the door. "Come on, place is lame anyway." They shoved past Megan, one of them brushing her shoulder hard on purpose. The bell over the door jingled as they disappeared into the night. Megan felt her legs shake, but stood her ground. The biker smiled weakly. "Didn't have to do that, miss." "Yeah, I did," she whispered back. "People like that think they can get away with anything." But when she turned around, Carl's furious face told her she'd done the one thing she couldn't afford, cause trouble. Megan stood in front of Carl's office door, her apron balled in her hands. He'd barked at her to come back and have a word after the boys left. The old neon clock above the counter ticked past 1 a.m., the diner nearly empty now except for the old biker, who sat quietly sipping his refilled coffee as if nothing had happened. Inside the cramped office, Carl leaned against the battered metal filing cabinet, arms crossed over his chest, eyes narrowed at Megan like she was a piece of gum stuck to his shoe. "I told you before, Megan," Carl began, his voice low but edged with annoyance. "We don't stir up trouble with the local boys. Their dads own half the shops in town. They spend money here, they tip well, they talk. And now, you embarrass them?" Megan clenched her fists tighter. "I didn't embarrass anyone. They were harassing that man." "He's nobody," Carl cut in sharply. "Some washed-up biker bum. You want to stand up for every drifter who wanders in here? You gonna pay the rent when those boys tell their daddies to stop coming here, huh?" Megan's throat tightened. She needed this job, needed every crumpled dollar bill that came from long hours, greasy plates, and burnt coffee. But tonight, she'd reached her limit. "I did what was right," she said, her voice cracking just slightly. "If you're firing me for that, fine." Carl didn't even blink. He grabbed a cheap white envelope from the desk drawer and slapped it into her hands. "Consider this your last pay. I'm not running a charity. Get your stuff and go." She stepped out of the office feeling numb, the envelope heavy in her hand. She pulled off her apron and hung it on the hook behind the counter. The old biker looked up when she passed his booth. "You okay, miss?" he asked, voice rough but kind. Megan forced a brave smile. "I'll be fine, just lost my job, but I'll be fine." He nodded slowly, looking like he wanted to say more but didn't. Instead, he pulled out a worn leather wallet and left a tip on the table, bigger than she expected. Outside, the parking lot was empty, except for the man's old bike, its chrome glinting under the buzzing streetlight. Megan wrapped her coat tighter around herself and started the cold walk home, the taste of regret bitter in her mouth. By morning, the story would spread through the small town about the waitress who'd stood up to rich boys and paid the price for it. She braced herself for her mom's worried look when she'd come home without rent money. 2 hours later, Carl was counting the till again when the distant rumble shook the diner windows. At first, he thought it was thunder rolling in off the plains, but it grew louder, sharper, unmistakable. Engines, dozens of them. He stepped to the window, squinting under the harsh sun. His mouth fell open as the parking lot filled, motorcycles, gleaming chrome, leather jackets with matching patches. One by one, bikers pulled in, parking in neat rows like an army rolling in for battle. The door swung open with a force that rattled the old neon sign. The same old man Megan had protected walked in first, helmet tucked under his arm, eyes locked on Carl. Behind him, the diner's booths filled with leather-clad men and women, some old, some young, all carrying the same air of quiet power and respect. A few regular customers stared wide-eyed, coffee mugs frozen halfway to their lips. Carl sputtered, What's all this?" The old biker placed a hand on the counter. "You fired that girl for doing the right thing. That don't sit well with us." One by one, the bikers pulled out cash, ordering coffee, pie, stacks of pancakes, filling every booth, every stool. The diner hadn't seen this much business in years, and every one of them asked the same question. "Where's the girl?" But Megan wasn't there. She was at home, wiping tears off her mom's shoulder, trying to stay strong. She had no idea that her act of kindness would bring her back more than she'd lost, more than she could ever imagine.